do you think? Enough points? Too many areas? What would you do? Somebody take, thank you. Babe.
Hi, Caroline. This is Maeve Buckley at our table. We felt that all of the points that were mentioned are very valid. Extremely difficult to rank them because they're all very full of merit in their own right, as well as being interrelated. We thought that education could probably be pushed up. That said, that education could probably be pushed up the ranking because there's a lot more that could be done with education within sport. And we thought that health could be expanded to health and well-being, because apart from, I suppose, physical health, there's an awful lot that sport does in terms of mental health, loneliness, all of that part of things. And then we also felt that there could be another category which you would call inclusion or engagement, and that the point was raised at this table by a number of people that there's a perception out there for those who aren't that involved in sport that sport is very competitive and hyper elite, and that can be off-putting to people who aren't very involved, and that it's incumbent on the sports themselves to try and break down that barrier and get more people included. So that was probably...
So you would have an extra one, or perhaps even an overarching one, that sport brings us together, or sport has the capacity to bring us together.
Exactly. Yeah, okay, exactly.
Great. Thanks very much. Can we just check down here? Anybody got anything to say at this table? This is hop upon you time, so I hope you're all ready. Yeah, anybody here? Gary?
Hi, yeah, we also agree that all those points were relevant and important. However, we had some sense that maybe they miss identity, you know, a clear sense of identity for sport. So the piece we spoke about was achievement. What are we actually trying to achieve at every level of sport? And if we could get clarification around that, it would make the communication to other stakeholders, other communities outside of our own, much easier.
But where are you saying that clarity needs to come from? It's from this, is it from this room? It's from this room. It is from this room, very good. Yeah, I agree with you, yeah.
Provided. And then secondly, we spoke about participation and maybe inclusiveness needs to be included there somewhere. That it's about sport for everybody, sport for all. No matter who you are or what your ability is, sport has an open door for you and has a facility and an environment for you to take part, etc. So we need to be just clearer around what it is we're trying to achieve, what our ambition is. You know, if it's a reputation for Ireland, well then we've got to be successful on the international stage. But we've also got to be successful in other parts of sport in terms of what we do nationally here.
Yeah, so are you saying that each individual sport needs to clarify what its aims are?
No, I think we need to do it as a nation.
As a nation,
and then we need to, out of that, then that leads in terms of the direction that our sports take.
Very good. Okay, can we take this table here? Anybody talk to us from this table here, please? Yep, there's Mike behind you.
Yeah, hi. We are in agreement. We've actually added health and well-being onto health, and participation and inclusion is an essential part. But we were looking about the community as well, and it's the wider community. I mean, for instance, we ought to be celebrating some of the reputation that we've gained in the international triathlon, for instance. We are second or third in the world in terms of number of triathletes per capita, which is a phenomenal thing, and that's not just in the sport of triathlon, it's across a lot of other sports. And we need to push those agendas and push that participation and push that inclusion.
Okay. Anybody else? Actually, well, we'll come here and then I'm going to ask for volunteers. Okay, but we'll just take one here. Will somebody speak to us from here? Have we a volunteer? Thank you.
We got stuck on the education question as well. Not stuck, but we got lively about it. And basically, we were all just discussing how there isn't enough formal and informal activity for kids, particularly in the lower cycles. And this is my own personal opinion, but there has to be some way to get past where in junior schools they're being discouraged from going out and running around in case they fall or hurt themselves.
Sure.
I don't know if there was a way to have a kind of common insurance policy the way they did for land access, for things like that, so that teachers are freed up to allow the kids to go out and run around and play football and do those kind of things.
Sure. I think that's such a well-made point, which I can't see anybody disagreeing with. All right. I mean, it has to make sense that there would be an aim that every child would be active for half an hour a day, and we're actually clamping down on that at the moment, saying stop running in the schoolyard. We had a volunteer down here somewhere, didn't we? Go ahead, thank you.
Hello. My name is Ken McHugh from Sport Against Racism. I put my hand up. I'm old enough to remember the Black Power salute at the Olympic Games.
Oh, yeah.
And when I saw the cover of the report, I thought it was Tommy Smith. I had to look twice at Brian O'Driscoll, would you believe? But it brings me around to talking about cultural integration. It's a very important, like the Minister's constituency has a big percentage of people who are born overseas, people from different ethnic backgrounds. It's really important to include them as well. I'm not forgetting the travellers. There's travellers out there who don't participate in sport because they can't get into clubs, for example. And also, it's really important that we include everybody, not just different ethnic groups, but also people with disabilities or mixed abilities. Try to get into some of our stadiums, for example, with a wheelchair. It's virtually impossible. We have to have standards. We have to look abroad. There's the European Commission white paper on sport. It's very important to have that. We need integration, equality, and inclusion policies put into the constitutions of sport organisations alongside child protection and anti-doping, or else the Minister is going to stop your funding next time, I can tell you. And if you're involved in Erasmus Plus Sport European funding, you're going to have to tick those boxes. Thanks.
So your plea is to individual sports to pay a huge amount of attention, each individual one, to the agenda of inclusion. Okay. Thanks very much. Let's just take one more before we go on to the second question. Come on. Can we have a volunteer, please? Thank you. There you go. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. From our table here, we've had a fairly active discussion, and one of the initial areas we would say would have been from, I suppose, the education point of view. Certainly where, as sportsmen and women and children particularly starting out, they need to see that sport is a lifelong thing to be involved in. The benefits would be a byproduct of that, where they would be healthy and fit. We would have a lot more kids who are not in the obesity category. And certainly over time, they become more involved participants in the country. They get involved more in sports, either at management or coaching, different types of things. So it's a lifelong process. Certainly we would also see then the benefits of the health from that. We also look at then the financial side, where sport then becomes more attractive in the sense that it's seen as something to be involved in. It's the thing to be there, to be seen with. For example, it could be, say, corporate sponsorship, and overall, things like sponsoring of children to play in certain sports through different scholarships, etc. So there's one area. We would also see then the importance of joined-up thinking in relation to different government bodies, whether it be sports, through public expenditure, that ultimately, if they have an involvement in sports, that it be led and guided by a grouping who would be overarching that whole process, that they can speak from experience to people who are involved, whether through sports campus, through capital grants, whatever it be, that it's ultimately led by a team who are dedicated to that task with subject matter experts in the different fields involved in the process. Certainly that there are no surprises at a later stage from, for example, a government department that may say, sorry, you can't do that. Whereas if everyone's involved from the initial stages, well, then there's no surprises at a later stage. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Let's move on then. We are collecting the cards, by the way, and they'll all be collated because the Federation of Irish Sport is going to send you back a report on what you said and thought and chatted about this afternoon. Let's move on, though, to the second question. And bearing in mind that you're all raising the issues that you think should be brought to the table, this second question is a really tough one. On your tables, you also have the sort of handout, the little pamphlet that the Federation of Irish Sport produces. And it is just thronged with impressive facts and figures. Thronged. But the trouble is, when you've got so many facts and figures, and you've got one person's attention for 130 seconds, which ones do you go with? What do you say? It's a bit like a development of that first question, and it's all very well to say, well, there are so many things, how can we pick one? Well, if you get somebody's ear for 30 seconds, you got to pick one. So that's our question. Imagine Again, we're using the doorstep, but we're only using it as a metaphor. It's not that it is necessarily a political thing at all. This is anybody. This is you meet the unconverted. Because for us to become really relevant, we have to convert the unconverted. You meet the unconverted. I'm asking you, as a table, bearing in mind all those facts and figures, what is your 30-second pitch? Yes, they call it the elevator pitch. What is your 30-second pitch that carries in it the single key message which you believe might entice somebody who doesn't care, a member of the public in general, to say, wow, I didn't know that. I think maybe sport does matter. Tell me more. Okay? About... Can we please get a couple of the responses? I felt this table here was quite active, so we're going to hop on you first. Can we get your... We'll hand the mic. Who are we handing the mic to? Will you take it? Go on. Okay, we'll get the 30-second pitch from this table. In response to anybody, somebody who doesn't know, doesn't care, doesn't have any insight into the value of sport, how would you try to persuade them? Let's just hear, please, what this table would have to say.
Okay, there was a couple of things. First of all, the key message is sport changes lives. And when we looked at that, the one thing that's really struck us is that people who partake in physical activity are 15 years younger in health terms than those who do nothing. We think that's a very powerful, very easy statistic to be telling somebody. We also talked as well about 40,000 jobs are supported by sport in Ireland. Very, very few people would know that, and it would make them stop and think. And I think if you couple the two together, the fact that it changes lives in a very tangible way in terms of reducing your age by 15 years, and couple that with the message, the strong message about the support in jobs, it would be quite a powerful message.
Perfect. Thanks very much. So sport is good for you personally, you individually. Great. This table over here, you look pretty active as well. Can we hop on you too, please? Anybody there? Go on. Thank you, Sarah.
Well, we had lots of discussion at our table, and I think we had two different perspectives on it. First of all, we felt you could either come up with something very shocking and take people aback and suggest therefore they needed to get involved. Or the other thing was, similar to the other table, to pick something that was personal and go back to your 5 themes and put them into a tagline, because when we were listening to the earlier discussions, we felt that there was something. The 5 themes are absolutely important. I think everybody's agreed on them. Obviously there's suggestions around, you know, including different wording, but we felt it all sounds quite sterile, so and you know, you've got to appeal to people in a different way. The other thing we felt was difficult about 30-second pitches, telling someone in their teens or in their 20s about they'll be 15 years younger doesn't necessarily resonate in the same way it would with somebody a bit older.
So tailor the message to the person you're speaking to rather than look for the big generic message.
Yes.
Great. Thanks a million. Let's take another table. Can we hop on you here? Anybody going to volunteer here? Please. Come on, hands up. Liam.
Thanks, Caroline.
No problem.
I lifted my eyes out of my pad just a second too quickly. We had a varying conversation here. In the previous question, we talked a lot about the economy, but this one we brought it back more to really the health, and really I suppose it's what's important. And we're all too busy getting on with our lives, running around, bringing kids here, there and everywhere, trying to get everything done, just trying to have some time on the day to go to bed on time. And we're actually forgetting what's important. And I think through sport and through activity, we have the answers to that at our fingertips. We all have the ability to let people know what's important, but it's creating some sort of campaign to get that message out there. I think we had the same conversation around something shocking or something personal or a bit of both. And the messages that Miriam was saying in my ear here was the advertisements that really had an impact in Ireland the last few years. Number 1, car crash ads, and number 2, the smoking ad of that gentleman last year. But who's to say we can't have people who have really suffered from morbid obesity in an ad like that, and how it's impacted on their life, how it's impacted on their ability to play with their kids, walk with their kids, have fun with their kids, and how it takes away from their lives. So I think there's definitely something in there, I would say definitely linked to the health consequences of a lack of activity.
So it's more, rather than saying that sport matters, you'd be saying to people of every age, your body matters, and sport can help you take care of it.
And activity. I mean,
sport and activity, yeah. Very good. Okay, thanks very much. Let's come here, hop on you here. Who's going to volunteer here? This table? Somebody has to. Come on. Go for it. Over here. You're going to go for it, aren't you? I think I saw a faint tweak here, a twitch that said okay.
No, our thoughts were quite similar to the other ones. And we thought as well, yeah, you could probably best to keep it personal. Likewise, we said health. You know, you could say, well, sport will offer X billion back to the economy, but then they might say, well, how much does that reaches their pocket? And if there's a general trend towards the house to getting somebody more active, and it's not just in a sort of sporty way, it's just be it walking or any sort of physical activity, it's going to have a benefit for the whole house and can have an immediate reward for that household. So keep it personal, keep it to the household, and we think that's the way.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, any other volunteers, or will we go on to the third question? Because we're heading fairly tightly to our coffee break. Volunteer, brilliant. Thank you. This table over here, thank you. Last one.
Hi, I think we need to think about capital in terms of sport. If we can imagine our well-being created through sport, therefore sports as a capital, creating sports capital through our social and cultural activities would be very vital to our lives and well-being.
Yeah, sport as a capital. Okay, thank you very much. Now, third question, final question in the workshop. Bearing in mind the video we saw, and bearing in mind the 5 areas which have been identified, this is coming back, I suppose, almost to taking personal responsibility. What we're asking you to do is think. What could your sport do to contribute over any one of those 5 areas? What could you do? Looking at the sort of examples we saw, what could you do? Perhaps if you had no extra funding at all, perhaps if you had a little bit of extra funding, or perhaps if you had all the funding that you needed. All the funding that you could possibly imagine. But first of all, try and think of it in the 3 ways though. What could you actually do? With no extra funding, with some extra funding, with all the money in the world. Cycling went from fairly mainstream races to huge big participation events, creating opportunities for all the different members of the family on one weekend. Volleyball changed the rules of its sport to make it more attractive to education. So that's the sort of stuff we're saying, what could my sport do? What could my sport do tomorrow to contribute to any one of those 5 areas? Just the way we are. What could my sport do if we had a little bit of extra funding? What could my sport do if the sky was the limit? So this is your opportunity to say, oh, what we could do. So I'm just going to ask for a couple of volunteers, please. Maybe from around here. We haven't got anything from here. Anybody? Hands up, anyone? Please? Yes? Somebody has taken it? Yeah? Thank you. Would you mind standing up, please? Thanks a million.
I suppose at our table the discussion centred around, we've had a number of years now with quite flat funding. While yes, it's been difficult, I think there has led in, and we all agree, to a certain level of kind of creativity. We have been able to perhaps create more out of less, which is obviously equally important. Not to say that additional funding is not needed and equally as important. What we kind of came to the conclusion is that perhaps after the experience of the last couple of years and being incredibly creative and going through tough times, additional funding would enable us to kind of maximise on those programmes and initiatives and new outlooks that we've created within our organisations.
Just tell us about your gymnastics, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just tell us, when you say you've been creative, would you like to just tell us, say, one creative thing that you're particularly proud of having done? Because we might all say we've been very creative for the last couple of years. So, for example.
Well, one creative thing was we took Marcus from an intern through the Federation into our staff structure, but seeing as he just handed me the mic, I think we'll be firing him. I suppose we were creative in how we worked with our thinking from our new systems that we established, taking our new kind of wide net squad systems through communities right the way up to our performance structures. We spread the net much wider. Perfect. We brought a lot more coaches from a lot more clubs in. We created a new, I would say, identity, and I would go as far as ideology within the organisation as to what we wanted to achieve. And I mean, my performance manager is sitting right beside me, and she finishes pretty much every slide now with, and remember, no moaning. And that we try to kind of we've tried to create a more positive outlook with an organisation, which I think has benefited us anyway.
Terrific. Thanks very much. Next volunteer, please. If we don't have a volunteer, we'll have to hop down here. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind just standing up and telling us what your sport is, okay?
Hi, I'm Lisa Kelly and I'm representing Irish Wheelchair Association Sport. One of the 5 areas which we can contribute to with no extra funding would be the area of education. We currently provide disability awareness, inclusion and education. And what we've done is we've got our members who are currently participating in many of our sports to kind of go out to schools and promote inclusion. So it's coming from a personal point of view. So an area that was brought up earlier on, but the personal point of view. And that's something that we can kind of contribute to on like an ongoing basis. So that's one, I suppose, for no extra funding. We are short-staffed. We have...
So if you had a bit of extra money.
A bit of extra money, we said, to run specific health promotion for people with disabilities. I suppose the kind of the general mainstream doesn't specifically allow for people with disabilities who have extra medical complications. So for that to be one of our extra funding lines as well. And then if we had lots of money, we'd like all accessible venues in the country so that all of our wheelchair users, our people with mobility issues could attend all events and therefore create more participation, more revenue, and so the cycle goes on.
Great, thank you very much. That's terrific. Anyone down here? Do we have, or did we have a volunteer there? Yes, please, go ahead. And behind, yeah, we'll come to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Aoife Lane. I'm from the Women's Gaelic Players Association. I suppose what we did with no funding was we set up a new organisation to represent the top ladies footballers and camogie players in the country. And I'll keep this short because I know there's lots of people who want to speak here, but I think with a little bit more money, what we'd really like to do, and Women in Sport hasn't been spoken about hugely yet today, but is to tap into the network of unbelievable role models we have in our Gaelic games who are female. I know Sinead Goldrick from Dublin is sitting over there, she's just won. But I think we have this amazing resource of accessible, relevant, visible role models for young girls. And I think it would be a huge resource in terms of participation for women's sports. And we're very much conscious of our work to promote participation in girls. So with the help of our NGBs as well, who are working hard in that space.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And behind you?
Hi, I'm Sarah Keane from Swimming. No extra funding. There's 2 things that we're doing this year. The first thing is that we're looking to change the culture within our sport, because in a lot of ways it has been about celebrating performance. And therefore this is not about money, it's about saying that how do we celebrate other achievements? How do we celebrate people who are leading, for example, being club captains within their clubs, or people who are good team players? So that's one of the culture shifts that we're working on. It'll be a medium-term plan. The other thing is we want to start getting people who work in facilities, who are involved in facilities, who own facilities talking, because we build swimming pools for a reason, but they cost a lot of money. So from that perspective, we think in the recession that people have forgotten why we built them in the first place. There's a lot of problems about access to facilities. So we believe if we can get all the stakeholders together around the table, start talking about how we can do that efficiently and open it up more, bearing in mind the cost aspects of it, I think that's something very important. So we've started that off with there's a lot of stakeholders involved in swimming pools. The swimming pool programme has been closed for a period of time. Swimming pools are closing down, but we need to see what we can do to keep people swimming. And I suppose if we had lots and lots of money, what we would do is get everybody under 8 able to swim in this country. It is a sport for all. We're talking about women in sport, and we're talking about all other inclusion pieces. It is a sport that is already 50% female and male. It is a sport that's for fat and thin, for young and old, for able-bodied and disabled-bodied. So from that perspective, it's also, we're an island nation, and there's a safety issue around it, and then it opens us up to lots of other sports, be it sailing, triathlon, other things. So our aim would be to get Ireland swimming by the age of 8.
Terrific, thank you very much. Over here, have we a mic, please? Thank you.
I'm Karen O'Sullivan, ice skating, and I'm going to take the liberty to talk on behalf of my colleagues in ice hockey as well. Starting at the top, as you said, Caroline, this is blue skies thinking. All the funding in the world, we would like an ice pad. Not just one, probably 4 in the different provinces. However, we'll go backwards. Some funding, certainly from ice skating, a little extra funding will increase the international medals we brought home from 2 to 3 next season, and the inter-club competition medals of 2 to possibly 4. I do know my colleagues in ice hockey have been away as well and probably have similar results. I might remind you, we've done this with no full-size ice rink. No funding, what can we do? Well, on the back of what the Minister had said to us today about asthma sufferers, in the 2015 season, we're going to target Asthma Society and children with asthma, because believe it or not, in the cold environment, they do not suffer the same types of physical disabilities that they might do out on the running track. So we can engage children, adults that have disabilities. We have also engaged with children on a small level where they are visually impaired, hard of hearing. Wheelchair Association, we have worked long and hard. So we're looking at inclusion. No funding, we're going to maintain that. We're going to dig deep, and we're going to continue. And even without the blue skies thinking, hopefully next year we'll see more results on the international and elite stages.
Thank you very much. Can we have one last? Yes, thank you. Jan here.
Hi, I'm Sinead Galvin from Athletics Ireland. I suppose.
Closer.
Sorry. I'm Sinead Galvin from Athletics Ireland. I suppose over the last number of years, while our funding has remained flat, we have almost doubled our membership to 54,000. And we've done that in 2 ways. One is through our Little Athletics programme, which brings kids from the age of 5 to 10 into the sport, focusing on things like agility, balance and coordination, which unfortunately a lot of kids are basically missing nowadays. You spoke about that earlier on in terms of what's happening in primary schools. The second thing we've done is we have made our clubs more open. We launched a Fit for Life programme back in 2007, and this is basically to allow a person who's interested in getting fit, improving their fitness, similar to what Swim Ireland started recently in their Swim Mile, to become part of a club, but not to feel intimidated. It's more about fun and participation. So that's allowed us to grow our membership at a time when our funding has remained flat. On the elite side of things, we're also delivering more medals on the world stage, which is great. If we had a little bit extra funding, I think it would allow us to strengthen our partnerships with primary school. The one thing that the Irish Sports Monitor reports have shown us, which is quite interesting, is from an individual sport point of view, if you can get people into individual sport, they're more likely to keep participating in it to the long term. So it tends to be a sport for life. So if you can engage young children, especially girls, they're more likely to stay in sports. So that's hugely important. So we could have more people on the ground at a primary school level. On the elite side of things, I think it's a coaching perspective. We would love to have more full-time coaches, which would allow us to bring us onto another level. We've done a huge amount of work with the Institute, and that's been fantastic in terms of our services, but I think that's one big gap that we have at the moment, and that would allow us to bring things onto another level. And I think in athletics, the fact that we've had so many good representatives, from Sonia O'Sullivan to recent days Derval O'Rourke, that's a very strong positive message for young females to say it's okay to be competitive. I think participation is great, but you know what, girls, it's okay to be competitive.
It's okay to win.
Yeah, and be a world beater like they were. So that's a good message to get out as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sure everybody has a wish list the size of today and tomorrow if funding was no issue. But maybe by the time we hear from Kingsley this afternoon, you'll all feel a lot more confident about your ability to actually source funding yourselves